Well, what can your employer tell you not to wear at work? Well, that question is connected to one of the most controversial rulings ever handed down by the European Court of Justice. Today, the court ruled that businesses may bar their employees from wearing an Islamic headscarf. But this is not just about the headscarf. The court said that the ban is legal as long as it applies to all visible political, philosophical, or religious signs without distinction. Now, that includes Christian crucifixes and Jewish skull caps. The judges decided that company policies demanding employees dress neutrally, they said it really does not constitute direct discrimination. Well, this ruling was prompted by the cases of two women in Belgium and France. Both were fired for refusing to remove their headscarves. Today's ruling is the court's first in connection with wearing headscarves at work. The ruling, however, is not the final word when it comes to public opinion. Tonight, the debate that continues beyond the courtroom. Joining us now from London is Keith Wood, Executive Director of the National Secular Society, and Hajar El-Jahidi with the European Forum of Muslim Women in Brussels. To both of you, welcome. Hajar, I want to start with you. Your organization says that today's ruling is a serious threat to the principles of equality. How so?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I just want to say that it's interesting that we just saw the coverage of the populist winds blowing over Europe. This is indeed one of the ways that populism has manifested itself. Today, we have seen a segment of European population be alienated and be stigmatized openly with the approval of the courts. And this will only serve to leave these Muslim women who do choose to wear the headscarf at work.
Well, how are you being stigmatized?
In their houses.
Hajar, let me ask you, how are you being stigmatized? Because the court said this has to be applied to all religious symbols, not just Islamic symbols.
Yeah, well, I would like to ask the question. Religious symbols and people of different faiths and different backgrounds have existed in Europe for years. So how come only in 2017, now do we have this problem and now do we need to address it through the courts? Have we never had Jewish men wear the kippahs or Catholics wear crosses at work in all these years? Why is it that in 2017, when we have the phenomenon of more and more Muslim women joining the labor force or wanting to join the labor force, why do we have them now?
That's a good point.
Now it becomes a problem, and now we have to rule on this. It just raises a question, and of course, there's a background that...
Hajar, let me just interrupt here. I have to pull Keith in. I have to pull Keith into the discussion here. Let me just ask Keith. I mean, Hajar makes a good point. Why not just live and let live?
Well, this ruling was very specific that it didn't apply if it wasn't evenly applied to all political or religious opinions. And it implied also that if customer positions that weren't customer-facing were excluded from that, there was an implication that it wasn't fair and wouldn't be acceptable. And the court also left the door open for charges of indirect discrimination, that if they were made, then the test would be that the attempt to exclude there should be equality to impose this was that it was a legitimate aim,
but isn't this, and
that it was proportional.
Isn't this, though, Keith? Isn't this indirect discrimination that we're hinting at? I mean, what good? What good purpose is really behind a company that says to the women, take your headscarves off?
Well, it isn't going to be just to the women, is it? It's going to the opposite, I think, is actually draconian too, to say that there is absolutely no circumstances ever where an employer can say that we don't want you to declare your political or religious or indeed non-religious perspectives at all in your work. And I think that's an unreasonable position to say that can never, ever happen.
Hajar, we have some people today saying that this is a victory for a secular European society. Is it?
Well,
then what is secularism?
To make much difference. Sorry, who was that directed to?
This is for Hajar. Go ahead, Hajar.
Yes, I was saying what is secularism and what is neutrality? Neutrality is, of course, we agree that businesses should be neutral and societies should indeed be neutral, but neutrality is shown through actions and through discourses. Does religion have a place in the workplace? Of course not. But does race have a place in the workplace? Does gender or gender identity have a place in the workplace? Of course not. Does that mean that individuals who represent those races or religions or genders or LGBTQI groups, for example, does that mean that they don't have a space in the workplace? Of course they do. But will they be proselytizing? Will they be preaching? No, they won't. A woman who wears a headscarf can do it, and that's what they want to do. They want to work, but they're not there preaching about their faith. Does a woman with a headscarf on have less capabilities and less ability to be neutral than a woman who doesn't have a headscarf on? That's the question we really should be looking at. I think it's a pretty obvious answer we have.
That's an interesting point too, Hajar. I mean, people want to work, right? And some critics have said that this ruling will prevent Muslim women from becoming a greater force in the working world of Europe. Keith, what do you say to that? And what about this victory for a secular society? At whose cost?
Well, the definition of secularism is that it applies to it's an equal society for everyone, whatever their belief or no belief. I mean, I'm not in favor of the hijab ban in public, but I think this one is reasonable if the court has to be persuaded that there is a legitimate aim and that it is being proportionately applied. That's going to depend on the facts of the case. I think that's setting the level quite high, and I suspect there will be very few employers who will manage to persuade the court of that.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but I'm sure this debate will continue for quite some time to come. Keith Wood, Executive Director of the National Secular Society, and Hajar El-Jahidi with the European Forum of Muslim Women in Brussels. To both of you, thank you very much.